The stars of the outer rim shone cold and sharp above the world called Vestra 9. It was a quiet planet of white ice plains and blue storms, beautiful but dangerous. Few dared to live there. Those who did were miners, soldiers, or people with nothing left to lose. Far above the frozen clouds, an alien observer ship drifted through orbit. Inside it sat Raal, a member of the scholar race known as the Thalan. The Thalan were thinkers, not fighters. Their long silver fingers were made for holding pens, not weapons. They were the record keepers of the Galactic Council, sent to watch other species fight and report what they learned. Raal had studied many wars before, the insect armies of the Hethar, the cold mechanical fleets of the CERN and the stormwalkers of the Zin. But this mission was different. For the first time, Raal was sent to observe humans. He did not understand why. Humans were new to the galactic map. Small, scattered colonies, little technology compared to other empires. Yet the Council had grown curious. Reports said humans fought with strange emotion, almost madness. They called it courage. Raal thought it was foolishness. He tapped his log recorder. His voice was calm, slow, and careful. Observation Day 1. Arrival in orbit around Vestra 9. Purpose: study human military behavior during conflict. Expectation: limited discipline, emotional decision-making, high casualty rate. He closed the recorder and leaned back. The ship hummed softly around him. He was alone, as he preferred. Through the viewing window, Raal could see the thin lights of human bases scattered across the icy surface. There were no great cities or shield domes, only small camps, tents, and metal shelters buried against the snow. It looked fragile, primitive. He adjusted the scanner and saw a line of small vehicles moving along a ridge. Humans preparing for war. The enemy was known as the Draxor Swarm, a hive-minded species that consumed everything in its path. The Council wanted to see how humans would defend themselves against such a force. Raal sighed softly.
"They will fall in hours," he whispered to himself.
There is no logic in their methods. He set his landing coordinates and guided his ship toward the surface. The landing site was harsh. Winds howled across endless ice. Raal stepped out wearing a pressure suit and walked slowly toward the human camp. The air bit at his skin, even through layers of fabric. His translator device blinked softly on his chest. 2 human guards raised their weapons as he approached. Their breath came out in clouds. "Identify yourself," one shouted. "I am Raal of the Thalan," he answered. His voice came through the translator, flat but clear. "Observer of the Galactic Council. I am sent to record your methods." The guards exchanged a quick look. One of them tapped his communicator. "Captain Mira, we've got some kind of watcher here. Says he's with the Council." Moments later, a woman stepped out of a tent. Tall, dark hair tied back, a long scar running across her cheek. Her eyes studied Raal with sharp focus. "You're the observer?" she asked. "Yes, I will not interfere. Only watch." She gave a short nod. "Fine, just stay out of the way. We don't have time to babysit." Raal followed her into the base. The humans moved quickly, loading weapons, checking armor, sharing data on portable screens. It was noisy, full of life and motion. Nothing like the quiet order of the Thalan archives. He noticed the humans laughed even as they worked. They joked about the cold, about bad food, about who would get home first. There was no fear in their voices. Raal frowned slightly. They laughed before battle? Strange, he began recording again. Observation Day 1, surface entry. Human soldiers display lack of discipline. Excessive humor in preparation phase. Possible psychological denial of danger. One soldier passed by carrying a large case and smiled at Raal. "Don't worry, shiny head, we'll keep you safe." Raal blinked. "I do not require safety. I'm here to observe." The soldier laughed again. "That's what everyone says before the first shot's fired." Then he walked off, still smiling. Raal felt a strange discomfort he could not name. As the day passed, the human camp became quieter. The scouts reported that the Draxor swarm was moving fast. The attack could come within a day. Raal sat by a small heat lamp, his recorder in his lap. Around him, the humans rested. Some cleaned their weapons, others wrote letters or looked at small screens showing pictures of their families. He listened without speaking. A young woman nearby whispered to another, "If I don't make it, tell my brother I kept my promise." The other replied softly, "You'll make it. We all will." Raal turned away. They prepare for death as if it is normal, he thought. No sadness, no despair, only acceptance. When he looked again, he saw Captain Mira standing outside the tent looking at the sky. Her breath turned white in the cold air. Raal walked up beside her. "Captain, do you believe you will win?" She glanced at him. "Doesn't matter what I believe. We fight so others can live. That's enough." Raal tilted his head. "But your chances are small. Logic says you should retreat." She gave a short laugh. "Logic doesn't build homes, observer. People do. And people don't run every time things get hard." Her words confused him. The Thaylen avoided all conflict. To them, survival was reason enough. But these humans, they fought not just to live, but to protect others. He recorded another note. Human motivation appears illogical. Emotional reasoning replaces tactical retreat. Yet their morale remains high. Potential factor in their unusual success rate. Later that night, Raal stayed awake, watching from the ridge above the camp. The cold wind hissed around him. Below, the humans sang softly, a low, sad melody that echoed across the snow. He did not understand the language, but the feeling in their voices struck something inside him. In that moment, he realized that the sound of human voices in the dark was not a sign of weakness. It was defiance. It was life refusing to be silent. Raal stopped recording. He simply listened. When morning came, he joined the humans at the edge of the camp as they prepared for the battle to come. Snow fell thick and heavy. Raal's translator picked up chatter across the human channels. Squad 3 ready. Shield units in place. Civilians evacuated. Captain Mira stood at the front, helmet under her arm, calm and steady. She looked at Raal. "Stay close to the bunker when it starts. The Draxer won't show mercy." He nodded slowly. "I am not afraid." She gave him a faint smile. "You should be. That means you still have something to lose." Raal did not answer. He looked toward the white horizon. The scanner showed movement there. Many life forms approaching fast. The humans took position. No one ran. No one begged. The air filled with the hum of weapons charging and the distant roar of the storm. Raal lifted his recorder one last time. Observation Day 2. Humans prepare for battle. I predict their destruction within 6 hours. Yet, they seem unafraid. I do not understand this behavior. He lowered the device and stared into the snow, feeling something unfamiliar. Not fear, not curiosity, but a strange pull in his chest. Perhaps the council was wrong. Perhaps there was more to these beings than anyone had told him. As the first echoing roar of the Draxor filled the air, Raal realized he was no longer just an observer. He was witnessing something his people had never known, the courage of humans who fight not to win but to protect one another. The ground began to shake. The sky flashed red, and the war for Vestra 9 began. The sky above Vestra 9 turned red as the storm broke. Lightning flashed across the clouds, followed by a sound like a giant's growl. The scanners screamed warnings. The Draxor swarm was coming. Raal stood beside the human soldiers near the ridge. His heart, small and fast, thudded inside his chest. In all his years as an observer, he had never seen such a sight. From the frozen horizon came waves of black shapes moving like a sea of claws and metal. The Draxor were not one creature, but thousands crawling, running, and flying. A storm of living machines. Captain Mira raised her hand. "Positions!" she shouted. Her voice cut through the wind. The humans moved instantly. No panic, no shouting, or only focus. Raal lifted his recorder and spoke softly. Observation Day 3. Draxor swarm has arrived. Human units display exceptional coordination. No visible fear response. A soldier named Tom, a young man with kind eyes, stood near Raal. He grinned as he checked his rifle. "You picked a fun day to visit, shiny head." Raal blinked. "Fun, this is chaos," Tom laughed quietly. "You'll learn what chaos means when you stand next to us." Raal did not understand, but he stayed silent. His duty was to observe, not question. The ground trembled as the first line of Draxor came into view. Creatures of steel bones and burning cores, their limbs scraping across the ice. "Open fire," Captain Mira shouted. Blinding light flashed from the human lines. The sound shook the air. Raal flinched as the first Draxor exploded into fragments. The humans fired with calm, mechanical rhythm, their weapons glowing red from heat. Raal's hand shook slightly as he tried to record. Human accuracy rate high. Coordination efficiency above 90%. fighting in storm conditions without hesitation. But the Draxer did not stop. For every one destroyed, 2 more appeared. The ground turned black with their remains. The storm grew stronger. Wind tore at flags and armor. A squad near the left flank was overrun. Mira turned to her second officer. "Send the drones to sector left. Hold the line." Ral could see the humans struggling, but still they fought. One soldier fell and another took his place without pause. They covered each other, shouted warnings, passed ammunition, and moved like a single living machine made of will. For the first time, Raal forgot to record. He simply watched, his breath caught between disbelief and awe. Hours passed like minutes. The battlefield was chaos, fire, smoke, and frozen wind. The Draxor screamed with metallic fury, but the humans answered with silence and steady fire. Raal hid behind a half-destroyed wall, his translator flickering. He watched as Tom ran past him carrying a wounded soldier on his shoulder. "You will get killed," Raal shouted. Tom turned his head, smiling through the snow. "Not if I move fast." He disappeared into the storm. Raal stared after him, confused and strangely shaken. The Thalen would have left the wounded behind. Saving one life in the middle of battle was illogical, but these humans did it again and again. Suddenly, the earth erupted nearby. A Draxor artillery blast tore through the ice. Raal fell backward, his ears ringing. When he opened his eyes, a huge shadow loomed over him. A Draxor beast, its body like dark glass filled with fire. It opened its mouth, glowing with heat. Raal froze. His translator blinked red, broken. He had no weapon, no defense. Then a burst of light hit the creature's neck. It screamed and fell apart into molten pieces. Captain Mira stood a few meters away, smoke rising from her rifle. "Get down, observer," she shouted. Raal crawled behind the wall as she joined him. Her armor was scratched and blackened, her face streaked with dirt. "You are injured," Raal said. "I'll live," she replied, reloading. "You stay behind me." "You're not built for this," he hesitated. "I do not understand how you keep fighting. Your losses are high." She looked at him, eyes bright through the snow. "Because if we stop, the others die. That's all the reason we need." Raal wanted to say it was illogical, but he could not. The battle raged for the entire day. When night finally came, the humans had pulled back to the main base. The Draxor swarm had been slowed but not stopped. The snow around the camp was black with metal fragments and blood. Inside the command tent, the surviving officers stood around a glowing table showing their defense lines. Raal sat quietly in the corner, his recorder running. Mira spoke, her voice low but firm. "The Draxor will strike again before dawn. We can't hold the ridge, but we can trap them in the canyon. Tom, prepare the charges." Tom nodded, already moving. Raal interrupted softly. "Your numbers are too few. The chance of success is below 30%. Mira looked at him. "Then we'll make that 30 count." He didn't know how to answer. Logic could not explain her tone, the calm certainty, the quiet strength. After the meeting, Raal walked outside. The sky was dark, filled with moving clouds. He watched the humans work, repairing guns, dragging fuel, setting traps in the snow. Every face he saw was tired, but every eye still burned with light. One soldier was singing softly as she cleaned her weapon. Another shared food with a comrade too exhausted to move. There was no anger, no despair, only a shared purpose. Raal thought of his home world, where the Thalen studied life but rarely lived it. They spoke of peace but avoided hardship. He wondered now if peace without courage was truly living. He turned on his recorder again. Observation Day 3 continued. "I have witnessed the humans in battle. Their strength is not in numbers or weapons. It lies in their will to protect. They act without logic, yet the result defies reason. I find myself unable to remain neutral." His voice trembled slightly at the last words. Before dawn, the Draxor came again. The swarm filled the horizon with black shapes. The humans waited in silence behind the frozen ridges, the charges buried deep under the snow. Captain Mira's voice came through the communicator. "Hold your fire until they cross the line." Raal crouched beside her, clutching the edge of the trench. The noise of the approaching swarm grew louder, metal grinding, claws scraping. The first line of Draxor entered the canyon. Mira raised her hand. "Now!" Explosions tore the ground apart. The snow lifted like a white wall of fire. Hundreds of Draxor vanished in a blinding wave of light. The humans cheered, but the victory was short. From behind the smoke, larger beasts appeared. heavy carriers with glowing cores. The humans fought on. The air filled with light, sound, and fury. Raoul saw Tom running again, carrying new charges toward a fallen ridge. He was shouting something, but the wind drowned his voice. A Draxor projectile hit near him, throwing him into the snow. Raoul ran forward without thinking. He had never run toward danger in his life, but something stronger than fear pulled him. He reached Tom, who was trying to get up. "Stay still," Raoul said, grabbing his arm. Tom coughed, smiling weakly. "Didn't think you'd come out here, shiny head." "Your humor is misplaced," Raoul said, trying to pull him back. But another explosion shook the ground. Captain Mira's voice crackled in his ear. "Observer, get back to the bunker." Raoul looked at Tom and then at the burning ridge. "If I leave him, he dies," he said. "Then move fast," Mira replied. They dragged each other through the snow, half blind, half deaf. When they reached the bunker line, Raoul fell to his knees, exhausted. Tom leaned against the wall, breathing hard but alive. The Draxor roared once more before retreating into the storm. The traps had worked. The canyon was filled with broken machines. The humans had held the line. Hours later, the camp was quiet again. Fires burned for warmth and for the fallen. Raoul walked among the soldiers as they repaired weapons and treated wounds. Tom waved to him from his cot. "Not bad for your first day on the front," he said. Raoul tried to speak but stopped. Words felt too small for what he had seen. Captain Mira approached, tired but standing tall. "You did well, Observer," she said. "Next time, stay behind cover." Raoul looked at her and said softly, "I understand now why you fight. You are not just defending land or orders. You are defending each other." She nodded. "That's what makes us human." He turned his gaze toward the horizon where smoke still rose into the sky. The snow reflected the glow like 1,000 tiny fires. For the first time, Raoul felt something new. Not fear, not duty, but respect. He opened his recorder one last time for the night. Observation day's end. Humans survived what logic said was impossible. I have seen courage not built from strength, but from heart. If the Council could feel what I have felt today, they would no longer call these beings primitive. He closed the recorder and looked at the stars. They seemed brighter now, as if the universe itself was watching these fragile creatures and silently cheering for them. Raoul whispered to himself, "They are more than I ever believed." And somewhere deep inside, he knew that he would never see battle or life the same way again. The cold dawn on Vestra 9 brought an uneasy silence. The snow was stained black in places where the Draxor had been defeated, their twisted bodies frozen in ice. Smoke rose from the ridge where the humans had fought tirelessly, and the wind carried the scent of burnt metal and frost. Raoul stood at the edge of the camp, watching the survivors move through the frozen ground. He had never felt so unsettled. For the first time, he realized that observing humans was not simple. Their actions, so small and simple on the surface, carried a weight that logic could never explain. Captain Mira approached him, her boots crunching in the snow. "Resting will do you no good," she said, her tone firm but not unkind. "We have to reinforce the perimeter. The Draxor will strike again." Raoul nodded, though his mind wandered to the soldiers he had watched die yesterday. He had seen humans throw themselves into danger for one another countless times, and yet they endured. It was impossible. As they walked through the camp, Raoul saw Tom, still bandaged from his injuries, working with a small team to repair the ice defenses. Sparks flew from his welding tool as he fixed a broken barricade, his hands steady despite the pain. "You shouldn't be out here," Raoul said softly, approaching him. Tom looked up and smiled faintly. "You think I'd let the walls fall while people are still inside?" "That's not how it works here," Raoul frowned. "It is illogical." "You could die," Tom shrugged. "Maybe, but if I don't do it, someone else dies. That's enough reason for me." Raoul stared at him, unable to argue. The Thalen avoided risk when it could be avoided. Human behavior was not just irrational, it was extraordinary. Suddenly the ground shook beneath them. The wind carried a low, guttural roar. Rael's sensors flared red. The Draxor were returning, with stronger, faster, and more organized than before. Captain Mira's voice rang out. "Everyone, to positions. Shields up! Focus on the canyon!" Raoul ran alongside the soldiers as they moved into their battle formations. He had no weapon, no armor, yet something within him compelled him to stay close. He had come to witness the humans, but now he could not tear himself away. The first wave of the Draxer surged across the horizon, their massive forms crawling over ice and rock. The humans opened fire with precise coordination, their weapons cutting down dozens of creatures in seconds. But for every Draxer that fell, 2 more appeared. Ral watched as Captain Mira ran to a wounded soldier, dragging him behind cover while barking orders. He saw Tom lift a fallen comrade over his shoulder and sprint into the open under heavy fire. Ral could no longer record. Words failed him. Logic failed him. All he could do was watch in awe, as humans risked everything to protect one another. The battle reached its peak when a massive Draxor machine, larger than any Rael had seen, broke through the canyon defenses. Its glowing core pulsed with energy, and its claws shredded the ice as it advanced. "Take cover," Mira shouted. Ral ducked behind a barricade as the ground trembled. He saw soldiers fire relentlessly, their shots bouncing off the beast's armored shell. They were desperate, but they did not falter. Tom ran toward the machine carrying a set of explosive charges. He knew that if they detonated the charges at the right time, the beast could be destroyed. But the timing had to be perfect, and the risk was extreme. Ral stood frozen. "You cannot do this," he shouted, forgetting for a moment that he should not interfere. Tom glanced at him, determination shining in his eyes. "Someone has to. You wouldn't understand yet, shiny head, but you will." Before Ral could respond, Tom sprinted across the open ground. The Draxor machine noticed him immediately, turning its glowing eyes toward him. Ral felt a surge of panic he had never experienced before. He ran, not away, but toward Tom. The human soldier did not hesitate. Together they dove behind a fallen wall as the machine lashed out. Sparks flew and ice cracked beneath them. Ral realized then that he could not remain a passive observer any longer. The humans had pulled him into their world, a world where courage outweighed reason and heart outweighed fear. He helped Tom plant the charges, his hands trembling but precise. The countdown began. "Seconds stretched into eternities, get back!" Mira shouted from the ridge, her eyes scanning the battlefield. Ral looked at Tom. The young man grinned through the dust and snow. "Ready?" Ral nodded, and they both sprinted for cover as the charges detonated. The explosion was immense. Fire and ice mixed into a blinding storm of light. When the smoke cleared, the massive Draxor machine lay in ruins. The remaining swarm retreated, leaving the humans in control of the battlefield. Ral fell to his knees, gasping for breath. He looked at Tom, whose smile was faint but triumphant. "You survived," Ral whispered. Tom laughed softly. "Of course. We always survive." Ral's mind struggled to comprehend it. These humans, fragile and small in comparison to the Draxor, had faced annihilation and won. Not because of weapons or numbers, but because of something deeper. A unity, a courage, a will to protect one another no matter the cost. The aftermath of the battle was quiet but heavy. Fires burned where the Draxor had fallen, and the wounded were treated by the human medics. Mira moved among the soldiers, her presence steady, comforting, and commanding all at once. Ral walked among them, silent, observing. He saw soldiers comforting each other, sharing rations and ensuring that no one was left behind. Every action was small, yet every action was meaningful. He approached Captain Mira, who was speaking softly to a group of soldiers. "You saved them all," Ral said. Mira shook her head. "We didn't save them all, but we saved who we could." "That's enough," Ral frowned. "Enough? How can losing so many be enough?" She looked at him, her eyes steady. "Because we fight for the living, not the dead. The living need us. And that is reason enough to stand." Ral felt something stir inside him, a strange, unnameable emotion. The Thalen did not feel courage in this way. They did not feel loss so deeply and still continue to act. He began to record in his log, but the words felt small. Observation Day 4. Humans have displayed what can only be called extraordinary courage. Their will to protect one another surpasses all known logic. The outcome of the battle cannot be measured in numbers alone. Something within them, something invisible, drives their actions. I do not understand it fully, yet I feel its power. That night the camp was quiet. Soldiers tended to their injuries, repaired their gear, and rested when they could. Ral wandered among them, watching their faces. Each one bore the marks of battle, cuts, bruises, exhaustion, yet their eyes burned with life. He stopped at Tom's bunk. The young soldier was patching his armor, humming a soft tune. "You should sleep," Raoul said. Tom looked up and smiled faintly. "Sleep when the world is safe." "Not before," Raoul nodded. He did not fully understand, but he did not argue. He sat beside him, listening to the wind howl outside, and realized that he had begun to admire these humans not for their victories, but for their spirit. Later, Raoul returned to his observation post above the camp. He looked at the stars, the same stars that had always shone cold and distant above him. But now they seemed different, brighter, warmer, alive with possibility. He spoke into his recorder one last time for the night. "Observation Day 4 complete. I have witnessed acts of courage, sacrifice, and unity that defy all previous understanding. Humans fight not for power, not for glory, but for each other. I do not know if my species will ever comprehend this, yet I cannot unsee it. I cannot unfeel it. This is no mere battle. It is a lesson." Raoul leaned back and let his eyes close for a moment. He thought of the Thalen who avoided risk and clung to logic. He thought of humans who embraced danger to protect one another. And for the first time he felt regret. Regret that he had come merely to observe and not to understand sooner. The night stretched on. Fires burned softly in the camp, lighting the faces of those who had survived. And above them, in his quiet post, Raoul realized that the humans had already changed him. He whispered softly to himself, "I thought I was here to study them, but they are teaching me instead." And in the silence of the Vestra 9 night, the observer understood that this war, this battle, was only the beginning, not just of the human struggle, but of the story he would carry forever. The battlefield of Vestra 9 was quiet at last. The Draxer swarm had retreated into the distant horizon, leaving behind broken machines, shattered ice, and the still smoldering remnants of their invasion. The humans had won this battle, but the cost was high. Many soldiers lay wounded or exhausted, their faces etched with fatigue and determination. Yet in their eyes there was no despair, only resolve. Raoul walked through the camp, watching the humans work together to clear debris, treat injuries, and fortify their defenses. Every action, no matter how small, seemed significant. Every life mattered to them. In the Thalen archives, he had studied countless species, yet none had shown such a commitment to each other, such courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Captain Mira moved among the soldiers, her presence steady, guiding, and reassuring. She helped a medic lift a wounded soldier onto a stretcher, and then adjusted the line of defenses for the coming days. Raoul approached her cautiously. "You've done it again," he said softly. "You survived. Somehow you always survive." Mira shook her head. "We don't survive alone. We survive because we fight together, and because we fight for those who cannot." Raoul studied her face. There was no arrogance in her expression, no boastfulness, only truth. For the first time he felt an unfamiliar ache in his chest, a feeling that humans called admiration mixed with guilt. He had come to observe them, to record their actions as if they were mere subjects. Now he realized that they were not objects of study. They were living proof of something his kind had never truly known. The next morning, Raoul was summoned back to the Galactic Council's communication relay. The council had received his preliminary reports and demanded answers. He walked through the snowy field, past soldiers who waved or nodded in greeting. He barely recognized himself among them. The cold in the battle had left him feeling strangely alive. The council chamber was cold and sterile, filled with Thalen elders and other species who had witnessed the galaxy's countless wars. They regarded him expectantly, their voices sharp with authority. "Raoul," one elder began, "report your findings. Did the humans perform as expected?" Raoul paused. The words he had prepared seemed insufficient. He had written them down carefully, but now, after living among humans, they felt hollow. "They exceed expectations," he said finally. "Not in strength, not in numbers, not in weapons. They exceed expectations in will, in courage, in the choice to protect each other against impossible odds." A council member's voice snapped. "Exceed expectations? Explain yourself. They are a primitive species. They are weak." Raoul's gaze hardened. "Weak? I have watched them face a swarm that would destroy many of your fleets. I have seen them risk their lives not for conquest, not for power, but for each other. Their strength is not measured by statistics, but by heart, by their willingness to endure, to fight, and to protect. To underestimate them is to misunderstand the very essence of life. The chamber erupted in murmurs, voices raised in disbelief. Raoul stood firm, feeling a confidence he had never known. This was no longer a report. This was testimony. Back on Vestra 9, the humans continued their work. Raoul returned to the camp, where soldiers were setting up a memorial for those lost in battle. Small fires burned, reflecting in the icy wind, and families of the fallen were honored with words, gestures, and silent reverence. Tom approached Raoul, a small bandage on his arm. "You look different," he said. "You've changed." Raoul nodded slowly. I understand now, and I regret that I did not see it sooner." Tom smiled faintly. "It takes time to understand humans, but once you do, you can never forget." Raoul looked at the frozen horizon. The wind tearing across the ice plains, carrying the distant sounds of birds, small, resilient life surviving even in this harsh world. He realized that humans were like that, fragile yet unyielding, and that fragility made their courage all the more extraordinary. Days passed. Raoul helped in small ways, though he had no combat training. He repaired damaged communication lines, assisted medics, and even carried supplies across the frozen fields. The humans treated him as one of them, not as an observer. They trusted him, and in their trust, he found a sense of belonging he had never felt among the Thaylen. One night, as the aurora shimmered across the sky, Mira and Raoul stood atop the ridge, looking at the battlefield below. The fires had dimmed, the silence of victory settling over the land. "You will return to your council," Mira said softly, "and they will ask what you have learned." Raoul nodded. "I will, and I will speak the truth. But I fear they will not understand." Mira smiled faintly. "Then they will learn someday, but you have already learned." Raoul closed his eyes. He thought of the soldiers he had seen die with bravery, of Tom running through the fire to save another, of the simple kindness humans showed in the middle of chaos. These were acts no weapon could measure, no strategy could predict. They were proof that life could triumph through courage and heart, not just logic or power. The day of his departure arrived. The Thaylen vessel hovered above the camp, its engines humming softly. Raoul stood among the humans, looking at the faces that had changed him forever. Captain Mira approached, extending her hand. "Safe travels, observer. Remember what you saw here." Raoul took her hand firmly, a gesture of respect he had never offered before. "I will never forget. You, all of you, have shown me a truth that my people cannot yet understand." Tom waved from a distance. "Don't forget to write it down," he called teasingly. Raoul smiled faintly. Some things cannot be written down. As the ship lifted off, Raoul gazed down at the humans below. Their small camp seemed fragile against the vast ice plains. Yet in that fragility there was strength. There was unity, courage, and heart. He felt a strange ache, admiration mixed with regret. He had come to observe them, but now he realized that observing was not enough. He had wanted to study them as one studies a specimen. But humans were more than specimens. They were teachers, warriors of heart, and beacons of hope in a galaxy that often forgot what courage truly meant. Back among the stars, Raoul prepared his report for the Galactic Council. The words felt heavy in his mind. He could describe the weapons, the strategy, the numbers, but how could he describe heart? How could he explain that a species so small, so fragile by their standards, could achieve what the strongest fleets in the galaxy could not? He sat before the recorder and spoke slowly. "The humans of Vestra 9 have survived an onslaught that should have destroyed them. Their victory is not in numbers or technology, but in courage. They fight not for power, not for glory, but for one another. They are stronger than logic can measure. I can regret that I was sent merely to observe. For now I cannot unsee their strength. I cannot unlearn their lesson. Humanity is not to be underestimated. Humanity is extraordinary." He paused, listening to his own words. For the first time he felt a sense of guilt toward his own people, the Thaylen, who would likely dismiss his report. They could not feel what he had felt. They could not understand the warmth that came from witnessing selfless courage. And yet he knew he could not remain silent. Raoul closed the recorder and looked out at the stars. In the distance, the icy blue light of Vestra 9 reflected faintly against the darkness. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "Humans are more than what we expected, more than we can understand, and I am grateful I saw it." The Thaylen vessel slipped through the galaxy, carrying Raoul back to his people. But his heart remained on Vestra 9 among the humans who had fought not for victory, but for life itself. He thought of Captain Mira, of Tom, of every soldier who had risked everything to protect others. He realized that the mission had failed in its purpose. He was not there to confirm the humans' weakness. The humans had shattered every expectation, every assumption, and every prediction. They had taught him something the Thalen could not learn from books or archives, that courage, unity, and selflessness were forces stronger than any weapon. Raal looked out at the stars once more. A lesson heavier than the galaxy itself rested in his mind. He would carry it always, and in that lesson he found a truth he could not escape. He had been sent to observe humans in battle. Now he would never stop regretting that he had ever come, for he could not unsee their greatness.